Well, hello everyone. Walter Bosley here, back at the Walter Bosley channel, and I want to welcome you all this afternoon, evening, depending upon where you're at in the world. And we do have folks from other parts of the world than where I'm sitting here in Southern California. And today we're going to be discussing Tartaria, um, a subject that I've been asked about over the years. Sometimes my response surprises people because they get what they don't expect. And I have, well, I'm of two minds on the subject, and we're going to get into that. I'm going to elaborate on that further. I've talked about this before. Um, Basically, I think the Tartaria folks, that camp, they're on to something. The problems I have with them is that the track that they go down wow, can be way off. Okay, I'm gonna talk about that a little bit today. So anyway, let me give a quick look at the live chat here. We got Johnny Side. We have Paul from Newcastle. We have Old Gaffer. We have ML. We have Oregon Music Fan. We have Nick of Time. We have 5DRG. We have the Major. Philip Blair is here. D. Dorothy Papineau. Fractal Education. And Chris Lococo, who's sick of this being ignored by scholars such as myself and Dr. Farrell. Chris Lococo, I'll have you know that I don't ignore the subject, but there's not a whole lot discussed on the subject that is very impressive when you look at it and listen to the arguments and the hypotheses. That's why I am talking about this today, is because, as I said, I think there's something to it, but I think popular Tartaria hypothesis or theory it just goes down these tracks that are dead ends because, quite frankly, it gets ridiculous. But I'm on your guys' side in a general way, but there's some things that have to be adjusted, and I'm going to address that today. But I'm glad you're here, Chris, because this is an interesting subject to me as well as other folks out there. And I do get asked what I think about it and when I'm going to talk about it. So here we are. And this won't be the last time that I talk about Tartaria. It isn't the first time either. We have Les Atticott. We have Solar Warden. We have Galt for Prez, 5DRG, and on and so forth. And I'm sure more people will file in as we go. Now, before I get started on the subject, I want to share with you some items we received for Christmas. The first one from our friend Todd Wood, the host and mastermind behind the California series that we do once a month here on the Walter Bosley channel, and the next episode on the ninth configuration is a week from today. We got this little gizmo from Gremlins 2 to go with the other gremlin that he gave us, gifted us over the summer. So this one will pop up in our on the road videos as well. Thank you, Todd Wood. And that's not all that Todd Wood sent for the holiday. He sent this figure, the Demogorgon from Stranger Things. Look at that. Yes, that's wonderfully disturbing. And you guys know that I take these things out of the boxes and display them. And anyway, again, Todd Wood, thank you very, very much. Todd Wood is one of the most generous people you could ever know. I'm not kidding you. And we even got a Christmas card from Todd. Todd also is provided us with a gift card, which is going to augment the studio. We're going to get a fan for the studio, right? And we're going to get a shelving unit so that we can start. You guys can see the tikis and Well, the figures that we get sent and the ones we've had in the past. So we're dressing up the studio all the time. And later on, before I go, we're going to open a package from our friend Ari Babel. So let's get into Tartaria. Now, as I said, I think the Tartaria guys are indeed onto something. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the idea that there has been a lost and forgotten civilization, or civilizations, more than one, out there in human history, is a very popular idea. And, from Atlantis to the mysterious megalith cultures, sites like Pumapunku and others that suggest that a civilization of advanced technology in the far remote past existed. These things are very popular and discussed a lot today. Books are written about them, documentaries are done, films are made about this stuff. This is not a new idea. The unique thing about Tartaria theory is that it is often believed by its proponents to be of a more recent vintage than ancient, and not just lost, not just forgotten, but suppressed. Okay, that is very interesting. Is it true? Well, as you know, Todd Wood and I, let me enunciate more clearly. Our first book together was the Ingersoll Lockwood mystery, right? Or the mystery of Ingersoll Lockwood. Let me see. Okay. And in that book, we discuss what we call the lost future. As a matter of fact, when we wrote the second book, the Curious Case of Margaretta Todd, that was the second book in the Lost Future series. What do we mean by that? Well, Todd and I agree that modern Western civilization was headed in a particular direction in the late 19th century, a much more elegant direction, just a different experience, a different world than what we got in the 20th century. And we argue the hypothesis that those who benefited from the direction the 20th century went were the ones who derailed this other future that we were supposed to have, this other 20th century that we were heading into and toward. Now, who were these others? Well, you can imagine it was corporatism, okay? The proponents of ultra modernization, okay? When you look at the leap that modernization took advantage of, that brought about between the 19th century into the 20th. I mean, just between 1899 and the 1920s themselves, look at architecture, look at clothing, look at the technologies that burst onto the scene. Now, there's good in these things, of course, but I think looking back on the 20th century, we see that there's a lot of negative in that century, and particularly at the hands of corporatism. All right. So I and Todd agree that there was a world stolen from us. But from our perspective, it was a world that was just beginning to emerge, that was just trying to take root. And we were deprived of it. We were not allowed to have this 20th century. Instead, we were pushed into the 20th century that we got, which saw technology mostly and greatly advanced for the purposes of war. Okay, the benefit of the concept of the military-industrial complex. That's who's been really running. That's who ran the 20th century, and what, almost 24 years into this century, they're still at it. They got their 100 years. They want another 100 years or more if they can get it. So there's evidence of a civilization that has been suppressed, but it was in that case not allowed again to lay its true foundations to really advance and to take root. Okay, in Tartaria theory and hypothesis, popular Tartaria theory and hypothesis, it is proposed that this is a civilization, okay, that was around for several centuries in some cases. And they had a different approach to technology, much more Tesla type of stuff. And it was taken over. The remains, the ruins, not so much ruins, but what remained, some of it abandoned, I guess, was just taken over by our society. Specifically, what is claimed by Tartaria folks about, say, the United States, geographic United States, for example. They claim that certain structures are actually centuries old, and the people, in our society, in American society, that are there in these cities just kind of found them there, pre-existing, that we did not build these things, that they were there. And I want to address that. I have some. Oops. Okay. Let's take, for example, the Parthenon in Nashville, Tennessee, in Centennial Park. Now, a few years ago on this channel, I addressed this because I looked into it. And quite frankly, I think it was in about 12 minutes that I found clear public records of the origin of this thing. What is the Parthenon? In Athens, Greece, there is this massive structure called the Parthenon. Okay, and it was a temple to Athena. Okay, Athena, Athens, and for a fair, like a World's Fair type of situation, the city of Nashville wanted a replica built of the Parthenon. So they had it built in the 1890s for this fair, but it was built with, like chicken wire and temporary type of materials because it was only for the fair. However, the city ended up really liking this thing. So when they brought down all the other buildings for the fair, they kept the Parthenon up, this replica. And then eventually, I think, let's see what we got here. By the, I think it was 1931 here. This will tell me. Yeah, the 1930s, the permanent replica was completed. Okay. Now, you can go to NashvilleParthenon.com and find this information, but it's also elsewhere. Okay, this is just an easy go-to for me today. It's also elsewhere. You can go to the public records, okay, of the various city and state agencies involved with the construction, the reconstruction of the temporary replica into the permanent replica, which exists to this day. Let us see. Let me show you. There it is. There's the Parthenon in Nashville, Tennessee, so that you know what you're looking at. And that's the permanent structure. Okay. The Parthenon in Nashville is the world's only exact size and detail replica of the original temple in Athens, Greece. When Tennessee celebrated its 100th year of statehood, that was the fair, it was for the Tennessee Centennial Exposition, Nashville took advantage of its nickname. It's called the Athens of the South. Okay, and they built what was the fine art building of this Centennial Exposition. They built it in the exterior shape and form of a lifelike replica of the Parthenon in Athens, Greece. Although built to be temporary, as were all the buildings of the Centennial, the Parthenon crystallized for Nashvillians their image of themselves and their city. It was a point of pride for the city. This is what drove reconstructing it in with permanent materials. Okay, the original temporary construction was built in 1897, and they in the redo they finished the work on the exterior by 1925. Okay, now the Athena statue on the inside, it wasn't finished until 1990. That's it right there. Okay. Now, I bring this up because this is one of the examples that.
Do you want me to put it closer to the camera?
No, that's good. I'm good. Thanks. This is one of the examples where, in my opinion, the Tartaria proponents are not doing themselves any service, because the Tartaria proponents some of them will just argue with you that, oh, that's all a lie. That's all made up stuff. And that brings me sooner than I intended to John Levy, which we'll get to a little bit more into John Levy down the road here after I tell you about more the history of the Parthenon. Okay. But the denial of documented, recorded, in many cases, photographic history is just a little too arbitrary, guys, and it doesn't help the case. Remember, as you listen to me talk about this and point out the flaws, I'm not anti-Tartaria hypothesis, okay? I just think claiming buildings that have a known history is the wrong way to go about this. It looks foolish. Okay, more on that shortly. Now, for instance, if you look at the people that worked on this thing. Russell E. Hart, born in 1872, died in 1955, was an American architect. He designed or restored many buildings in Tennessee, including the Governor's Mansion and the Parthenon. He was born in 1872 in South Carolina, graduated from Furman University in 1895, studied Gothic Revival architecture in Paris, France, and was trained by Noland and Baskerville in Richmond, Virginia, and Cram, Goodhue, and Ferguson in New York City. He became an architect in Nashville in 1910. Resident architect during the building of the Hermitage Hotel in Nashville while employed by J.E.R. Carpenter. And again, he designed the Tennessee Governor's Mansion in 1929, and he was part of the restoration of the Parthenon in Centennial Park, the restoration that made it a permanent structure. Okay. He resided at 212 Jackson Boulevard in Belmead, Tennessee, with his wife, Elizabeth, and their son, Maxwell. Ooh, he was a 33rd degree master mason. Oh, that makes everything that he does a big evil lie, right? Come on. Those of you thinking that, snap out of it, all right? He died in 1955 in Nashville, Tennessee. Why did I read all that? Because this is a real guy who lived, okay? And it's a documented fact that he was the architect on this restoration. These are real people. This is not a fantasy, okay? The guy lived. And I have a point to bringing this stuff up, okay? Let's look at William Bell Dinsmore. Born in 1886, died in 1973, was an American architectural historian of classical Greece and a Columbia University professor of art and archaeology. Graduated from Harvard with a Bachelor of Science degree. Worked in an architectural firm and then joined the American School of Classical Studies in Athens, Greece in 1908. Became the school's architect in 1912. Joined the faculty at Columbia University in 1919. He was the architectural consultant for the construction of the interior of a full-scale concrete replica of the Parthenon in Nashville, Tennessee. Okay? He then returned to the American School as a professor of architecture. And on and so forth. Dinsmore was elected to the American Philosophical Society in 1933. During the mid-1930s, Dinsmore engaged in a celebrated debate on the configuration of three phases of the Parthenon with the eminent Acropolis scholar William Dorpfeld. Okay. During World War II, Franklin Delano Roosevelt appointed Dinsmore chair of the Committee for the Protection of Cultural Treasures in War Areas. Okay. Think of that film Monuments Men. Okay. Dinsmore was elected to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences in 1944. He taught at the American School of Classical Studies in Athens. He retired from Columbia University in 1963, and in 1969 was awarded the gold medal for his archaeological achievements by Archaeological Institute of America. He died in Greece. Okay. The man existed. He was a real man. Okay. And, that's not some made up thing. My point of pointing this out to you, folks, is this is the kind of stuff that a particular Tartaria scholar and several others will just tell you, oh, that's all BS. Don't listen to it. Just ignore it. It's all nonsense. I'm going to address why you can't do that when you're trying to argue something that goes against either, the documented history or the popularly known history. You don't get to just dismiss it because it speaks out against your hypothesis, guys. Okay. John Joseph Early, the son of James Early, a fourth generation Irish stone carver and ecclesiastical artist, a skilled artisan architect and innovator in the use of concrete. Early is best known for the invention of the Early process, a technique also known as polychrome architectural or mosaic concrete. Now, I've seen where the Tartaria scholars will look at this concrete and they'll say, oh, that was ancient concrete. Yes, there was concrete in ancient times. The Romans used it. It looks like probably the real builders of the Great Pyramid, knew this as well. That doesn't mean that the very modern constructed Parthenon in Nashville is made of ancient concrete. Okay. Let's get down here to where in 1906, Early began investigating exposed aggregate concrete. Attracted to the use of color in Byzantine architecture, he was interested in trying to duplicate this effect in concrete. In 1914, Early modeled a stylized Indian head bust for the Q Street Bridge, now known as the Dumbarton Bridge, being constructed over Rock Creek Park in Washington, D.C. In 1915, John Early worked closely with the Commission of Fine Arts to produce a full-size mock-up of a wall section for Meridian Hill Park. Okay. Early was an expert in studying the architectural, structural technologies of the past and finding a way to replicate its effect or modernize, its use. Okay. These are the kind of skills, that got him hired to be part of this Parthenon restoration of the replica. Okay. Yes, these guys were aware of what was being done in ancient times. That's why when you look at this stuff, to some extent, it's going to look like the ancient technologies. That you cannot jump to the conclusion that the building itself was constructed in ancient times. Okay. Or even centuries before it was known to be in the place it's in. When you do that, it doesn't help the hypothesis. All right. Let's go to Foster Creighton. For those of you just logging in, we're talking about the Parthenon replica in Nashville, Tennessee, that was built for the state centennial, okay, in the 1890s, built with temporary materials and then reconstructed as a permanent structure, completed by 1931. Now, Foster and Creighton was a construction contracting firm of Nashville, Tennessee. It has been also known as the Foster Creighton Company, Foster and Creighton. It was founded in 1885 by Wilbur Foster and Robert Creighton, who had both served as city engineer of Nashville. A number of its works are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Okay, Foster and Creighton is identified on the Parthenon website as being the construction company contracted and involved with building the thing. Then we have an interesting guy. Now, remember what I said early on. Don't think that I'm just doing an entire hit piece on Tartaria. That is not what this is about. In the beginning of this episode, what I said was, I think there's something to the basic Tartaria hypothesis idea, but I think popular Tartaria theory has gone off the rails, okay, in a dead end direction, and greatly because of what I'm talking about here. And this is why I'm talking about this, okay? What I'm trying to do is explain that the Parthenon in Nashville is not a structure that is centuries old. It is not something there that was there in what is now Nashville, Tennessee, when the pioneers first came, okay, in the 16th century, 17th century. Okay, no, it was not there. It is not an ancient structure. It's not even centuries old. It was originally built in the 1890s and then turned into a permanent structure during the 1920s. Well documented. Okay. George Julian Zolnay was a Romanian, Hungarian, and American sculptor called the Sculptor of the Confederacy. Yeah, that's the thing. The Zolnay guy, early in his American career, took commissions to do a couple of one or two, maybe, I can't remember exactly how many it's in here, of Confederate history figures. He didn't do that for very long. He stopped doing that after a while. But yeah, you look him up. He was called the Sculptor of the Confederacy. Now this was he wasn't even, he was born during our Civil War, and he was born in Europe. So born on July 4th, 1863 in Bucharest. And he grew up in Bucharest, went to the St. Sava National College. He studied and graduated from the National School of Fine Arts of Bucharest. He then went to Paris, France to study under William Adolphe Bouguereau and Alexandre Falguiere, and then to the Imperial Academy of Fine Arts of Vienna, where he studied under Edwin von Helmer. This is a real guy, okay? He's well documented, all right? Came to the United States in 1893 to attend the World's Columbian Exposition, another World's Fair that you Tartaria guys keep saying was a city that guys, seriously. I'll have a word to say about the World's Columbia Exposition and the idea that it was permanent buildings that were there when, oh boy. Because I've looked into this personally. If it feels a little bit like a scolding, it's a well-meaning scolding, you guys, okay? Because I don't think you should just give up. I just think you need to get back on the rails. But let me continue. I can only wonder what's being said in the comments.
Don't worry, it's all good.
Okay, good. Well, I don't want I don't want anybody who's here because they're a Tartaria proponent to think that I'm dumping on the whole thing and think it has no value. I'll say again, folks, I think there's something to it, but I got to point out where you've gone in the wrong direction. So Zolny comes to the United States in 1893 to attend the World's Columbian Exposition, the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. And he was going to go back to Europe, to Vienna, but he decided to stay in New York City. And he became a citizen. 1898, he was one of 8 men led by Charles Decay, who founded the National Arts Club. Again, here, this is a real guy, okay? This isn't made up fantasy guy. St. Louis, Washington, D.C. He headed the sculpture department of the St. Louis School of Fine Arts. Let's see. He was on a 3-man board overseeing the art department at the 1904 Louisiana Purchase Exposition. And in a future episode, I'm going to have a few things to say about that. And in this episode, I have more to say about that to hint at. So again, this guy was a real guy, and we get down to what he was on the Parthenon. Okay, George Julian Zolny. He was involved with the sculpture of the relief images that go around the upper perimeter of the Parthenon. Okay, he's identified as such, well documented. Okay, this guy existed. What he did on the Parthenon, he really did. I mean, come on. Russell Hart, William Bell Dinsmore, John Joseph Early, the company Foster Creighton, and George Julian Zolny. I know some people are going to say, oh, they were all part of the conspiracy because they were going to get glory and accolades heaped on them for, being allowed to claim that they were the ones that helped. Folks, conspiracies are real, but you don't have to believe in every conspiracy out there, okay, to prove yourself to people in conspiracy land. Let's face it, God bless them, conspiracy land, okay, is full of nuts. We all know that there are nuts among us in the world of looking at conspiracies and accepting that there are conspiracies. But there are nutty people who take it too far. Everything's a conspiracy. That's the road to madness and unhappiness. So, as I mentioned before, John Levy, very popular figure in Tartaria research, probably the biggest name. And that's unfortunate because here's what you don't get to do. And this is something John Levy demonstrably does. You don't get to go look at history, okay? Whether it's an encyclopedia, online or in a book or something. You don't get to go there and just, as you're reading something that proves your hypothesis is clearly not true, not right, not correct. You don't get to just say, screw that, disregard that. That's all. That seems like nonsense to me. You don't need to know that. You don't get to do that. People say, Walter Bosley, you put out your own theories that people think are crazy. Let me tell you the difference between what I've seen Levy do and others. Unfortunately, he's not the only one. Let me point out the difference between what they do and what I do, how we do it. Okay. I don't just say, I think Cora Stanton in the Empire of the Wheel mystery was actually Etta Place, the friend and associate of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Okay. I don't just say that and say, there it is, take it or leave it. I explain why I think that and how I came to that. What do I present? I present that Etta Place's last known whereabouts, okay, was in San Francisco in 1906. The suspicion that maybe she might have popped up in an embassy in South America in 1909, I thoroughly dug into that through National Archives and such. That was not her. Okay. So her last known whereabouts were San Francisco in 1906. Now, remember, I say this is a speculative hypothesis. Okay. That's another thing that researchers of a lot of things, particularly the ET hypothesis and UFOs, but Tartaria researchers will just not say it's a speculative hypothesis. I try to be honest with my stuff. So Etta Place disappears, 1906, San Francisco. And in 1915, I have this mystery one show up dead in a lake in San Bernardino, same state as in San Francisco, California. She matches the physical descriptions of Etta Place: hair color, height, eye color, okay, and the age that Etta Place would have been. And there's other things in the Empire of the Wheel books that I present to show you why I propose that this woman, Cora Stanton, was Etta Place. In other words, I explain myself, and I explain myself in more than one book. Okay. But I always say it's speculative. I don't know for absolute certain. Okay. We don't have any biomaterial on the known Etta Place to dig up the body of the woman in San Bernardino to do a comparison on. Not yet, anyway. But you see, I don't just say Cora Stanton was Etta Place, take it or leave it. Anything you hear otherwise is nonsense. But no, you can't do that. Okay? You can't do that. Now, that's just one example. In Shimmering Light, okay, in the book in which I address what exactly happened at Roswell in 1947. All right. Now, I went into that with my dad's weird story of some underground civilization, and that he was briefed in 1958 on what happened in Roswell in 1947, and was told that it happened again. And he was being sent out as part of a big, massive Air Force effort to go retrieve this craft and the pilot of it and stuff from this underground world, blah, blah, blah. Pretty exciting, fun stuff, right? Well, all I had was my dad's claim and testimony. So I finally, after years, decided I've got to dig in and investigate my dad's story. What did I find? I found, okay, a substantial amount of historical evidence to suggest that what Roswell really might have been, most likely have been, was America's first attempt at manned spaceflight. Okay, and because of the era, the Cold War, okay, the early days of manned spaceflight, interest in this, and believe it or not, that dates back to the 1920s. Okay, that it was probably most likely something that they did and wanted to keep very, very secret and classified. And it would be easier to let people think, oh, it was little aliens from another world, okay, than to let the Soviets know that we, had done this. Now, I present that in my book. That wasn't my preferred thing I was looking for, but the evidence strongly suggested, okay, that what the stuff my dad was told was a big cover story, and that the technology at the time that was legitimately and honestly being researched and developed that time much more classified, or it was classified at the time. Now, since it's not, it was the one that had the most evidence at hand. So I had to present that, whether that was my favorite hypothesis or not. Now, likewise with Joseph Farrell and his book and research, Roswell and the Reich. Okay, whether you agree with his conclusion, his speculative hypothesis or not, the evidence he presents for his speculation is strong. It's just inconvenient to the ET people. Here's the thing. Roswell having been an ET event, there is the least I say little to zero evidence that that was an ET event. But that's the one that it gets. There are people out there that say, "Oh, it's concluded. It was an ET event. Everybody knows that." Okay, no, that's nonsense. That's malarkey. Okay, no, not everybody. A lot of people assume it, but there is little to zero evidence that that was an ET event. But what's popular is everybody wants to believe it's an ET event. And even more significantly, the ET industry, okay? They want you to believe it was ET. There's people, go to Roswell, New Mexico, okay? They're selling this stuff all over town, all right? The people who make those things, the people who sell those things, they don't want you questioning the ET hypothesis. They're all for it, okay? A lot of money potentially to be made, and has been with movies and TV and stuff like that. But there's much more evidence that it's something else. Now, the same mistake that the ET people make with Roswell, I see Tartaria enthusiasts, and in some cases researchers, making that same mistake. It's the assumption, well, everybody knows this, everybody knows that. No, they don't. And just like with the moon landing deniers, and oh my God, the most hilarious demographic we have in our community, our wider community, the flat earthers. Oh, for God's sake, don't get me started on them and that stuff. You don't get to just arbitrarily say, the history, the historical evidence that disproves my hypothesis, I'm just going to disregard it. I'm going to ignore it. You don't get to do that and be taken seriously. Okay? So, Tartaria guys, you got to stop doing that. And you got to stop exalting your researchers who do this. Okay? It's time to kind of grow up. If you want to be taken seriously, and if you really want to get to the truth, because again, I'm not your enemy. I'm not an anti-Tartaria theory guy. I think you guys are onto something. It's just the direction that you go with this stuff. Okay, take the Chicago World's Fair of 1893, the Columbian Exposition. I have been to a particular museum that has a book published during, it was compiled during the construction of the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, and sold at the fair. I have seen this book that dates back to 1894. I had to go in, they pull it out of the vault. I had to wear white gloves. And I looked through every page of this thing. It shows the photographs of the buildings being built in the 1890s. This was not an ancient city or a centuries-old city that was found when the pioneers came through Illinois and occupied. Oh, look at this. Let's just occupy it and call it our own. Guys, sorry. You don't, if you want to be taken seriously, you don't get to just say that arbitrarily and dismiss any rebuttals of the actual documented history. Come on. It's ignorant and childish to do that. And you're not going to be taken seriously, where you should be if you keep doing that. And we do see this with the Chicago World's Fair, with the Pan-Pacific Exposition, all these world fairs, these, we're told that these were built for the World's Fair, but actually they were there for centuries. And what it is they'll use photographs. See, there's no people there. This was taken when they first stumbled upon this and found, come on. When you look at it for 5 minutes, it falls apart. Now, Levy does this. Somebody turned me on to Levy years ago, and I went and looked at his stuff, and I just shook my head then, And I looked at it again over the years, and I looked at it again last night, and it's wow, wow. Okay. And yet, folks, every time somebody says Walter Bosley, why not, what do you think about Tartaria? You got to look at Levy's stuff, man. You got to look at Levy's stuff. And you know what? Even though I have before, I do. I go back, I look at it, and I go, well, he hasn't changed. Okay, but I don't buy it. And it's just an arbitrary dismissal. When you hear me talk about my book, Esoteric Napoleon, and I talk about how Napoleon, it was one of the greatest character assassinations in history, okay? And a lot of untruths were said about him. Okay, I propose this, notice I say propose it, after reading thousands of pages dating from authors that were contemporary to Napoleon during his lifetime over the last over 200 years of historical research. Okay? Detailed historical research on Napoleon Bonaparte. Okay? And I'm not the only guy out here. Believe me, for about 25 or 30 years, serious professional historians have voiced this same idea that Napoleon Bonaparte was not the tyrannical, despot, bloodthirsty guy that British historians have pushed. Mostly British historians have pushed over the last, over 2 centuries. Okay. And the American historians who get into lockstep with those British historians, they're Anglophiles. Okay. They're Americans who would just, love to be British. Again, my Brit friends, I know some of you are out there in the live chat right now. If you've been to the Walter Bosley channel before, I'm not talking about you, the regular guys. I'm talking about the same problem we have here in the United States of America, where our academia has people that are full of crap. And particularly our government leadership has people who are full of crap. Okay. So when you hear me say the Brits, I'm talking about, academicians and government people who have a stake in the spin. Okay. My point is, okay, I don't dismiss arbitrarily the facts. Okay. The documented facts. You can't just dismiss something arbitrarily because you have an idea that it's something else, and it's all fake. It's nonsense. Okay, you can't do that. And what I'm doing here today is trying to beseech you. Is that the word, or extend a suggestion that if you want me and even more accomplished scholars to take you seriously, you've got to stop with, I got to tell you, Levy's got to change his game. Levy's got to change how he does stuff, or you need to not found your whole thing on Levy's approach. Okay. Do your own. I'm not saying Walter Bosley wants to be the new Tartaria expert. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is do your own research. Okay? Dig this out yourself. And I mean, go to the source materials. All right? The world's fairs across the United States, these world's fairs that started popping up in the 1890s, they don't need to have been, some lost, suppressed civilization, buildings that have been there for centuries, and then this wild fantasy concocted, around them to suppress the history. None of that needs to be for the basic Tartaria forgotten or suppressed civilization to be possible. Okay? What I'm saying is let go of these ridiculous aspects. Let go of any scholar who encourages you to just arbitrarily dismiss documented facts in history. Okay, folks? Now, some people have argued that this is a reaction to modernization. Todd Wood and I have talked about that. in the context of our Lost Future series, where, yeah, things were, you know, you go to Paris, France, and you go to the parts of the city where you find a public water fountain, and it's this beautiful, ornate work of art, and then what? By 100, 150 years later, you go to a mid 20th century public water fountain, here in the good old USA, for example, and it's this ugly box, with this button. Ooh, yeah, I find modernization to have actually gone down an ugly road. It quit having any elegance or beauty, by the time the 1920s were over, and we increasingly started getting into, and a lot of that's the influence of Frank Lloyd Wright and Richard Neutra, architects that were into the boxy, everything's got to look like a Mondrian painting. Okay. I'm sorry, it just got ugly. By the time we got to these ranch style single family homes out here in California in the Southwest, it's just a bunch of ugly flat top boxes, one right after the other. Yeah, I'm not a fan of ultra modernization, but due to a nostalgia for certain aspects of the past, we can't let ourselves be lazy in our scholarship, okay, on this issue. Let's go to. I want to read something. This is a response to. This is written by Folk Loki at Reddit. Okay. A response to John Levy. Know nothing about this. So I've been browsing this circle of subreddits for a month. The premise of these subreddits is, in short, every building that the viewer finds large and pretty was the product of an old global super civilization, mostly because modernity is terrible or something. In this rambling essay, I'd like to discuss John Levy's video, Beginning Our History, which discusses the World's Columbian Exposition, the World Fair held in Chicago in the year 1893. This fair seems to have caught the attention of people in these subreddits and gets held up as an example of the so-called Tartarian architecture, and it's popular. Part 1, research and a few other guys. The first matter is one of research, mainly that John Levy doesn't do any. I'm not the only critic of John Levy, folks. What he does is pulls up a Wikipedia page, reads a few blurbs, and then proceeds to dismiss it all as the hokiest story I've ever heard. He does not offer a refutation or provide his own research to argue a point. In fact, he can barely even be bothered to actually read the whole Wikipedia article. This is written by Folk Loki, not me. I find the most telling point is near the start of his reading, where he begins to list the people involved, where after he reads John Wellborn Root, he gives up and says, and a few other guys. Now, this is very important, what Folk Loki points out, as though Root was the only important one, and that Burnham and Olmsted are footnotes that can just be written off. Okay. He goes on to say, Burnham assembled a team of some of the greatest architects in the country, and Olmsted was a landscaping visionary. I can vouch for that comment, because when you do the research, when you read, say, the Eric Larson book, Devil in the White City, or anything on the Chicago World's Fair, and oh golly, the book that I had to wear gloves to look at, that was published in 1894, Burnham and Olmsted, in their professions, in their world, are legends. Okay? Look up Olmsted and landscape architecture. Okay, this is a guy who really lived. And this article writer points out that Levy and others will just say, and some other guys. You don't get to do that. Okay? You can't do that. Just as this person says right here, these are people who lived lives, led careers, wrote letters, and left a mark on the country. To write them off as nameless nothings is a discredit to them, to history, and to their work, and that's true. Throughout the video, we see that Levy, has no real interest in sources or historical context. At one point, he scrolls through pictures, he forgets exactly what page he's on, and scrolls up to look at the top of the page, which is some art gallery. He offers his opinion that a building must have had something on top of it because part of its roof is flat. Nowhere in his discussion does he offer any meaningful historical, artistic, or architectural insights, nor is there an effort to learn or present research. Okay, you guys, if it sounds like I'm coming down hard on Mr. Levy, it's because that's the name that's constantly thrown at me to look at, to take Tartaria research seriously. This is somebody who I don't even know saying the same things that I and others have found. Part 2 from Folk Loki here. The low-hanging fruit in the agriculture building, or what is evidence? One building that the video devotes some attention to is the agricultural building. He uses it as a sort of the illustration for his thesis statement that it's absurd to believe that this was a temporary building built for a fair and then torn down. John Levy proposes an alternative, that this building, like everything else at the fair, was a pre-existing structure from the worldwide unified civilization with a uniform architectural style, and whatever nefarious force simply swooped in and claimed it, and that the exposition was an elaborate ruse to parade it out before demolishing it. Folks, Walt Disney's father, Elias, was on one of the construction teams that built the White City for the Chicago World's Fair. Walt Disney, born in 1901, grew up hearing about the Chicago World's Fair from his parents, from his dad, who was one of the men who helped build those buildings. Okay? It was part of the mix in what would lead Walt eventually to be fascinated with fairs and carnivals. And envision the greatest, most famous amusement park in the world. Okay? Elias Disney, look it up. Okay?
Did you forget the microphones?
Are you guys able to hear me?
It might pick up. I think it'll pick up fine, but I just noticed on that one, I was like, oh.
Well, I'm looking at the camera. We got the mic over here and the camera over there.
I'm sorry. Next time I'll put the mic in front of you. I just don't want it to boom out because it usually picks up really nice from there.
So on this, well, you heard what I just read.
Sorry. Audio is good. We got some good ones.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
A problem with the idea is here, folks, here's the agriculture building on March 17th, 1892, being built. Hello, there's the scaffolding. It's being built. Now, Levy and some Tartaria scholars would say, well, that's all BS. That's fake. I'm not going to believe that. I don't accept that. Okay. All right. That's the same type of thinking that leads to, well, if she drowns, she wasn't a witch. You follow me? It's the same level of ignorance to do that. Let me go back to this response. The World's Columbian Exposition of 1893 is incredibly well documented. It's a fact. While it's mostly trivia today, it was perhaps the biggest event in the world in its day. Folks, I vouch for that because when you do the research, you find out that at the time, okay, during the year that the Chicago World's Fair was open, an estimated 1 in 4 Americans made the trek and attended that fair. 25% of the U.S. population at the time attended that fair. Okay, it was huge. It was a major, there's just, the Folk Loki also points out, Levy makes a lot of very weird, seemingly random assumptions that aren't based on facts. For example, one of his arguments is that it doesn't make sense that they build a temporary building for a 6-month fair because, of course, now we use tents for those kind of events. But this logic is faulty for a couple of reasons. The first is that it ignores that these expositions were and are supposed to be big cultural showcases, and that includes the showcasing of architecture. The buildings themselves were part of the show. That's why they went through the trouble and the effort, okay? The architecture, you got to understand, architecture in American municipalities was changed forever, increasingly, going into the 20th century by just the Chicago World's Fair of 1893, folks. It influenced the way cities built their city halls and their other municipal buildings, okay? The 1893 Chicago World's Fair was a glimpse into the coming century. It, it was a huge influence. And that's why they would go to the effort to do this, because these were new ideas. Yes, they were based on the Grecian style and stuff like that, but it was a new idea for the modern world at that time. And these architects wanted to show off what their vision was, okay, for the coming century. And besides, these fairs weren't just 6-month events. They lasted a year. Okay. And in many cases, the cities liked a lot of the structures so well that they kept them. Balboa Park in San Diego is an example. Okay. Balboa Park in San Diego, okay, is the product of the 1959 Pan-Pacific Exposition. It was a sister exposition with the one in San Francisco during the same year. All right. When you go to Balboa Park and you go to the promenade where all the old, where the buildings are and the statue of El Cid and the botanical garden and all of that, these were structures that were originally built for that 1915 fair. And the city loved it so much that they said, let's keep this as our, this is what Balboa Park will be. Okay. So, and they went in and turned some aspects of it more permanent. Yeah, because they wanted to keep these structures. But, the idea that they claim, that, they're going to make an effort to build these things and tear them all down after 6 months. Well, not all of them got destroyed. And the fairs were open for a year and generated a lot of income for their cities and their local businesses and such. Okay. So, again, this arbitrary dismissal of well-documented history and facts, you can't do that if you want to be taken seriously. Now, on the idea that, for instance, what they called the White City, those fancy buildings you see in pictures of the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, the lazy Tartarian scholar, not all Tartarian enthusiasts are lazy, but the lazy Tartarian scholar will tell you that, when the people that came through and settled Chicago came through there, they found these buildings there. Nonsense. Jackson Park was part of what became the White City, the World's Fair. Okay. Folk Loki offers a description of Jackson Park. Okay. From page 95 of Eric Larson's book, The Devil in the White City. Jackson Park was 1 square mile of desolation, mostly treeless, save for pockets of various kinds of oak, rising from a tangled undergrowth of elder, wild plum, and willow. In the most exposed portions, there was only sand tufted with marine and prairie grasses. One writer called the park remote and repulsive. Another called it a sandy waste of unredeemed desert land. It was ugly, a landscape of last resort. Olmsted, look up Henry Law Olmsted. Olmsted himself said of Jackson Park, if a search had been made for the least park-like ground within miles of the city, nothing better meeting the requirement could have been found. Okay? Nothing about there were these structures that had been there for centuries, these elaborate, ornate structures. Nothing at all. Now, of course, the lazy Tartarian scholar is going to say, aha, of course it doesn't say that, because that's part of the lie. Well, folks, unfortunately, there's photographs of these areas, okay? And next time I talk about this, I'm going to specifically present to you photographs of the locations where lazy Tartarian scholars, not the sharp ones, not the ones who are good scholars, but lazy ones, claim that these buildings had been there for centuries. I just showed you a photo of one of those very buildings under construction in 1892. Part 3 of Folk Loki's argument, the transportation building. The building that captures the most attention from the Levy video is the transportation building. Levy does not even mention the architect's name, Louis Sullivan. Real man, he lived. He was the architect of the transportation building in the 1890s. Okay. Levy doesn't even mention his name. Sullivan is one of the most famous architects in American history. Folk Loki cites a repeated lack of research, okay, on the part of Levy and other lazier Tartarian scholars. Part of what passes for the video's thesis is that because the buildings were all built in the neoclassical style, they must therefore share continuity with other buildings that look like they're neoclassical or classical, or basically anything that the viewer has determined to be pretty. Because there's a style of architecture that architects, if they liked another guy's style or they liked this particular style, they would want to design their own visions in a particular style. Okay, this is something that architects do to this day, and have done for a long time. You don't get to dismiss architectural fact and history and replace it with, oh no, see, it was this mysterious lost civilization. Our architects, in the last couple hundred years couldn't, they could never envision something like this. Meanwhile, they did, and it's well documented. Let's see. He goes on. Anyway, let's get to his conclusion. What this video, the Levy video, shows, and what so many of these videos show, is a remarkable laziness and a refusal to do the most basic amounts of diligence. Because any possible source you can find that would give context is dismissed as fake. That's what Folk Loki says. You cannot do that. Okay, I'll repeat that. Any possible source you can find that would give context is dismissed as fake. You cannot do that. I'm sorry, if you find evidence that just starkly disproves your hypothesis, guess what? Your hypothesis is disproved. Go on to the next one. And he talks about the source, Levy, quoting out of context from a document or off an old map. In this environment, says Folk Loki, it seems that making things up is as good as spending time at a library. Now, folks, we're in a community where we know things are just made up willy-nilly, arbitrarily, and people just love that. And Folk Loki closes with, research isn't difficult. It takes diligence and effort, and sometimes it takes leaving the house. But with an open mind and an agenda other than a blanket hatred of modernity, there's a wealth of knowledge to be gained. And whatever the motive is, folks, it is fun to think, what if things weren't exactly as we're told? What if there's this other possibility? That's what I work in. You guys know that. What I try to do, though, is say, this is my hypothesis. I can't prove this yet. So that right there, what I was just reading to you and what we're just discussing, is my problem with Levy's stuff, but with the general Tartaria popular hypothesis, is that so much is trust me, bro. Okay? Or you're one of them. If you don't agree, if you don't arbitrarily dismiss the evidence to the contrary, then you're one of them, and, they just cover their ears and they don't want to hear what you have to say, which is contrary to what they want to believe. And I think that's too bad for the Tartaria community to do this to themselves, because I think you guys, you're on to something, but the current state of it ain't it. Okay. And I would say the best thing you could do is just jettison this particular style of approach to your hypothesis, where you just dismiss documented facts as just, oh, it's all made up. Okay. Because folks, the reason you got to approach this differently is you look nutty otherwise, and nobody's going to take it seriously. And I would like to see, I've said it before, I'll say it now. I want to see one of you out there in Tartaria land do a book, put it all together in a book. Okay. And people say, oh, I don't want to write a book. Okay, do a documentary, do something, put some serious research in some documented fashion, but bring it all together. Okay. So that it can be looked at and examined, and so that you have something that you can see where you need to revise it, at least a starting point. It would be the first block in the construction of your own foundation for your hypothesis, the idea that, this Tartarian idea that there was this suppressed civilization. Now, here's the thing. Where do they get the name Tartaria? Well, look, basically in history, I think it was between the 14th and the 19th centuries, this area of the Russian steppes and Siberia and into Eastern Russia, and this was was Tartary. Okay, those different cultures, all those cultures that lived in that area. This was known as Tartary, and yeah, at the time, Western Europeans didn't know much about those parts of the world. I mean, Central Asia, we know more about them now. Okay. So there's historical Tartary and Tartaria, separate from the popular hypothesis that we're talking about today. Now, another problem you've got when you look into Tartarian hypothesis is that Soviets, Soviet social engineers played around with that info. Okay. They put little time bombs, I guess you'd say, in the topic, because they were, the Soviet social engineers were big on erasing people from history. All right. If someone wasn't Soviet enough, wasn't the perfect, Marxist in their utopia they were trying to build and force on everybody, then what they would do is they would even airbrush them out of historical photos and strike them from the record. Okay. So they were in the habit of they perfected that kind of thing. All right. But they also are known to have used this in counterintelligence disinformation tactics. Okay. Tartarian Empire stuff is in the mix in that. So what am I saying? What I'm saying is you got to be careful with your data. Okay. You've got to look closely, and you've got to try to determine, okay, wait a minute, is this little bit that I found, this aha bit, could this actually have been, a product of KGB disinfo? Or, look up a guy named Dzerzhinsky. He was the early Soviet who founded a lot and perfected a lot of these kinds of tactics. Okay, he was a master of it. He and others. But I would like to see Tartarian scholars, Tartaria hypothesis scholars, really get more serious with their research. and be more strict with themselves and be more honest. This is a speculative hypothesis, where it is speculative. And just stop dismissing history that's just inconvenient to your hypothesis. Okay. You can't do that and be taken seriously by the people you're trying to get the attention of. Okay. Now, I'm open to having any Tartarian scholar who wants to come on here and discuss this with me. I don't say debate because I'm not going to get into a cute little argument show. Okay. I don't like that. I'm not saying that during the discussion it might not feel debate-like at points, but I don't debate because I don't like arguing and bickering. All right, that's just where I'm at. But I'll gladly discuss it with anyone. Okay, on this, because it is something that from outside I'm looking in and I'm like, okay, guys, okay, I see little glimmers of hope for Tartaria scholarship in this hypothesis, but I'm not ready to dive into it because I have not been impressed with the approach so far, and I would like to see your approach improve. Be more honest, be more just not be so dismissive of facts and evidence just because, as I said, they're inconvenient. And wow, I've been blabbing for 1 hour and 16 minutes. You see that I'm interested in this. You see, what I think about this. This is the longest I've blabbed straight for a while.
Well, I like what you said because, if you just dismiss history, that's like taking the books of Josephus or our fathers of mathematics, Archimedes, and throwing them all in the trash. You can't dismiss the basic history because as soon as you do, you're on shifting sand.
Yeah.
You're building your lie on a pile of sand.
Right.
Because it is those historians that recorded and scripted down that history.
Yeah.
And they're eliminating the hundreds of thousands of people who all said, yeah, I agree. That is our history.
Because I witnessed it or I documented it or, these are people that, have reason to say yes and accept, right?
Well, even if we're looking at like true research, if you're going to take history and question it,
yeah,
you better have
reasons.
Some real solid, rock hard evidence of why we should question that historical narrative.
Yeah.
For example, Napoleon. That's a great example.
Oh, and folks, again, what I discovered was I wasn't the first guy by any means to question, the common popular history on Napoleon. I want to pause for a minute to thank.
Sure. We got more than one to thank too.
Daryl Dothero, thank you for the $10 super chat. Thank you. We are monetized here now, folks, and I want to thank everybody who gives those super chats.
Good comment by Ev Dog for Mayor. That's interesting. Breakdown on the word tartar and torit. Yeah, that is correct in Semitic.
Ev Dog for Mayor says tartar equals Russian, torit to lay a path. Interesting, huh?
Very interesting. Thank you, Nick of Time. I think our audience really. Oh, I have good news to report. There are 2 trolls in the dungeons now.
Really?
Yes. Good job.
Tell me about the trolls.
And they were just being confusing and obnoxious and using bad language.
Yeah, off they go. Folks, we have zero tolerance for trolls here. You're just wasting your time, when you do that. Okay, so folks, questions and comments. You know how we do it here. You got to give it to me in all caps, or I'm assuming you're having a side conversation and you're not intending me to see it. So if you want me to see it and acknowledge it, or if you want me to answer a question, please put it in all caps. And here we have Ev Dog for Mayor was an external name for the Mongols, according to Fomenko. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and remind him, keep it on topic too, please.
Yes. And please, folks, thank you, Malia. Keep it on topic. One of my peeves is we're here talking about Tartaria. You know, keep it on that topic. Thank you. I really appreciate that. So, yeah, again, I don't want to give anyone the impression that I came on here to just, it's all stupid, it's all bad, there's no value to it. That's why I said multiple times through this episode, guys, I'm rooting for you. If I'm not on if you don't consider me on your side yet, I'm rooting for you. Malia hears me say it. I'm not just saying it here.
Well, it's true. A big portion of your research is breakaway civilizations, hidden underground world, or this other place that we haven't found yet.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of your research.
SDRG asks, what do you believe on the subject? Okay, here's what I think so far. I think that one possibility, one speculative idea that I have is what I mentioned before that Todd Wood shares with me. We talk about it in our books, The Mystery of Ingersoll Lockwood and The Curious Case of Margaretta Todd, is that there was an alternative 20th century that we were heading into, a much more elegant, much more humane era that was robbed from us, usurped by the corporatists, the globalists, the military industrialists, who forced a particular stark, cold modernization on us. They did not want that more elegant world. So I think that's something that Tartaria scholars, it's kind of an offshoot of what they propose. So I think there's some of that going on. I do think absolutely that there were, you guys know what I think of Atlantis and the Rama Empire and all that, but I'll tell you what, I do think that there was an ancient civilization on this continent, North America, that little glimpses and evidences have been found. And I think the relics of that have been suppressed at times by the Smithsonian and, academia, American academia. And this has turned up in my research, and I'm looking into it. And when I'm prepared to present what I'm talking about, I will do that. But I won't present it until I'm more prepared to present. And it is speculative. So I think 5DRG. You got to forgive me. I don't have my reading glasses on. To answer your question, that's what I mean. I think you guys are on the right track. What's wrong is these known buildings that we know how they were built, just this fantasy elimination of the known history to claim buildings you shouldn't be claiming. I just think that's the wrong way to go. I think the lost civilization that was here is older and reflected in more likely in ancient sites like Cahokia and things like that. But there's other sites that I'll be discussing in the future, because in one line of my research that I've been doing in the last year, I stumbled into a description by people who believe they found this kind of thing in a previous century. Matthew Travis asks, what evidence is interesting? Okay, if a Tartaria scholar were to actually find a structure of which the origin is mysterious. And yet clearly it's something that is not of the accepted style of the traditional accepted history of that area or that culture. But it can be shown to have been there, say in photographs of 100, from 150 years ago, and it was already there. Like, hey, look at this, look what we found. Yeah, within that context of, wow, look what we found here that was already existing. Okay, that would be interesting. Okay. Uh, Jad Assad. Walter, do you think that Greco-Roman architecture is actually Tartarian? No, Greco-Roman architecture, the development has been documented. It can be demonstrated. It's a style of architecture. Um, did whoever the Tartarians might actually have been perhaps build in this style? Yeah, they absolutely could have. Okay, but that doesn't mean that Greco-Roman architecture is not a real thing. And again, the problem is the buildings that are pointed out, um, you know, uh, as examples of the lost or suppressed Tartaria. When these buildings, when we know the history of them, okay, that's not a good look for the hypothesis. Nick of Time. Were the world wars orchestrated to create this alternate crappy 20th century and beyond? Um, well, I think a lot of scholars have looked at the world wars of the 20th century and pointed to, where orchestration, and the combatants in those wars being pushed into them. Yeah, you could argue that from more than one perspective. They were certainly engineered into it. Okay, because I see right now, I happen to see the 20th century as one of the main things that was intended with this 20th century that we ended up with, was the rise of um, uh, the modern technology military industrial complex. What we call a military industrial complex was a vision dating back easily to the 1890s. Okay, and that's what they wanted, these guys, and they got it.
Oh, we got another troll.
Whoa.
We got another troll in there, Walter.
I want to see this one.
Here, it's held, so you'll have to look here to see it. I haven't deleted it yet.
Tombs and temples. Clearly, I've done zero research. Tombs and temples. You're an idiot. Boot him. And yes, you know sir. What? If you're welcome to contact me. If I'd like to know. It's because I question Levy. Tell me I don't do research. What an idiot. Tell me my conclusions you disagree with. Tell me I'm wrong about speculations. Don't tell me I don't do research. Okay, that's you're just showing your ass there, which, in your case is probably easy to do because you're mostly an ass if you're going to come in here and act like that. Jad Assad. Walter, was electricity prevalent in the past? I'm not opposed to someone, in ancient times. Duh, because I mean, come on.
Egyptian has
all you have to do is look at electroplating, for example. Now, that's a very artistic electroplating and stuff. Yeah, that's a very low level kind of thing, but it demonstrates, an understanding of the basic concepts. So, again, I'm not opposed to the idea of electricity being used in the remote past. I'm not opposed to if somebody comes out and proves that eventually. Oh, look, that's exactly, I'm open to these ideas. That's one of the things that I like about the Tartaria hypothesis. I find it very interesting when they point to these old buildings and say, look at the configuration of this thing on the building. Doesn't that seem like an antenna of something? Well, I find that interesting. I'm not saying I agree with the conclusions on every example presented of that, but I think that that's a legitimate direction to consider and to go in.
Can I say something? Because I kind of have a question here about this.
Sure.
Is it fair to, and I might be being like severe pedantic on this, but I wonder, and it's bugging me because I don't know the answer to it. Is it fair to call a Tartarian researcher a scholar, a Tartarian scholar? Because in my mind, or my understanding of a scholar is someone who can go to school, study that subject. There's enough material out there on the subject to, and it's accepted by general population civilization rules to some degree. Science can accept it. You can have peers in the topic.
Yeah.
And different peers may have different opinions. But there's a solid base.
It's something that be taken seriously.
Fact that we've all come to an agreement that yes, this material may be researched, and you may become a scholar in it.
Well,
I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair to call people Tartarian scholars right now, because we can't even find a full book on the matter.
Well, my view of when I say scholar, I like to say the small s. I think anybody who does, seriously researches something, okay, and they really dig into the sources, the source materials, and they do their due diligence, that's a scholar.
Then, what differentiates then between a researcher and a
I'll tell
scholar?
You what differentiates them is whether they do the due diligence properly, okay, do their documentation. This is why we have adjectives like acclaimed scholars, respected scholars. Okay, there's a lot of, you can be a scholar and not be very good at it, but a scholar is reflective of the effort, the sincere effort you make in studying something.
Agreed. And I think the general audience agrees. I just thought it was a good thing to bring up.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute. How do we know that? Okay. Because we can't just willy nilly apply that term to anybody, because it does come to a certain sense of, oh, well, I can regard and respect this person's material because they are scholarly. They are well read.
Right? And here's the other thing. Being a good scholar implies that you're open to facts and evidence that may go against your pet hypothesis.
Yeah.
A true scholar does that.
Well, let's look at the very base of the word.
A lazy scholar
is one who goes to school on a specific topic.
Okay, but going to school can mean
you
many
study things. You can be self-studied. I'm not discounting that. But should we not say some period of time must be applied, and it be able to be researched that amount of time that you have applied to such a fringe topic?
Well, now you're getting into a realm of, if a particular body wants to say certify a scholar.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, now, but if you're talking scholar with a small s, anybody in this audience here could be a legitimate scholar on something.
Well, that's a good bring up that our commenter James brings up. What about the mud flood?
I haven't looked
into this.
It's very popular in Tartaria theory.
I know. I'm just saying, but does that topic fit into
what I have seen of it? It's interesting. It doesn't. It's kind of like, folks, you've heard me say it. I'm not particularly interested or fascinated with Bigfoot. Okay, I don't get it, the fascination. But hey, to each his own. Same thing with mud flood. It hasn't grabbed me yet. But yeah, it's part of why they say some of this disappeared. Was it the mud flood came along and the people in this mysterious?
But isn't it Levi himself who came up with this and put it together?
I don't recall. He seems to be he was the first big name, or the first name I saw associated with it, but I don't know if he was the first. I mean, I don't know if Fomenko talks about the mud flood or not. But I'm going to say again, before we get any other jackasses coming in here into my live chat telling me I'm talking out my ass because I'm not agreeing with their pet theory or being a part of their circle, jerk. I've said I'm interested in the topic. I'm not closed to it. All I'm trying to say here is, so far, there's some ridiculous nonsense being accepted as serious research and things that should be taken seriously. And no, sorry, it's wrong. And, somebody's got to point it out to you.
A black tie.
Ziad.
Say thank you for black tie.
Oh, black tie.
Thanks, man.
Thank you for the super sticker. 10 pounds. Wow. Thank you, black tie. Thank you for your generosity. Ziad Assad, Walter, do you think photography and some photographs may be much older than we grant them to be? Yeah, I think you could hypothesize that. We know that Da Vinci was messing around with things to do with light exposure on surfaces and such. I'm sure people were messing around with it earlier than conventional history.
I think we have evidence in Egyptian history. I think we have evidence of the very basic of photography, which is imprinting an image onto another object, is in exact form because of light and exposure.
Yeah,
that goes way back.
Look, here's what you got to figure: somebody messing around with different things, because people who figure stuff out, they often do it on the shoulders of other people before them, right? I mean, if Da Vinci was messing around with this stuff, doesn't it stand to reason that, he learned that somebody in ancient Grecian times was messing around with it? And doesn't it stand to reason, therefore, within that context, okay, hypothetically, that maybe this ancient Greek messed around with it, learned it in Egypt?
Alchemy.
Yeah, alchemy and all of that. So yeah, what you're saying is very valid. But here's the thing. Here's the point. The general point of today's episode is that, just like in any topic in this community, whether it's UFOs, whether it's paranormal, whether it's alternative history and such, there's unfortunately a bunch of nonsense that's out there. And if you want to, find the stuff that's not nonsense, if you want your topic to be taken seriously, it's time to grow up, do the adult thing, and start rejecting the nonsense, or start demanding, instead of people coming in and telling someone they're talking out their ass, be specific. If Levy or someone says something like it is, then you guys in your own community need to start putting him on the spot, and others like that need to start saying, hey, wait a minute. What do you mean by this? What's your evidence? What's your proof? How do you come to this opinion that you're stating? And, if they don't give you a sufficient answer other than trust me, bro, or you're a fool if you don't agree, I'm sorry, that disqualifies that person as a serious scholar. Okay?
Yeah, I think there ought to be a book. At least if you're going to purport yourself as a serious scholar to the matter, either you have enough published material, and that doesn't mean just book. That means article. That means journalizing. It's able to be read by the peers in your subject.
Well, it brings your whatever research is out there, brings it all into one place, right? Where Correct. You can then, somebody who's an outsider or new to it, can look at it and say, okay, here's the comprehensive body of this Tartaria research so far.
Yeah, but if you come at me and say, I've taught this subject to, for 10 years in this school, and I've published this and this material on it, and it's not just videos, it's written material that I have submitted to peers in my audience to critique, criticize, or do what they will with it. And here you go. This is my hypothesis. I'm presenting a valid research project to be criticized or critiqued by an audience of peers. It's so important. And that's where I think the conspiracy theorists go way off the edge, is because they don't believe in critically acclaimed actual research material that is published for many people. Anyone who has that material can get access to that material. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, it can be read, it can be, commented on. That's where these guys are going off on the conspiracy land. It is exactly what you said. They're throwing history under the bus. Anybody critiques or criticizes them, you must, receive the trolls of my anger.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's David Wilcock.
You know what it
we
is?
have that problem with the Grushes and the other things, right?
It's like UFO Twitter. If you question Lou, all the little trollish urchins, who worship Lou Elizondo come at you.
Lou lies a lot.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson asked, Walter, who are your top 5 Tartarian scholars and rappers? Is Thomas trying to do a trick question, saying that if I can't name 5 top ones, therefore I'm not researching it?
Thinly veiled passive aggressive.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. Exactly. But anyway, I don't know. Maybe Thomas isn't doing that. We might be unfairly characterizing it. But here's the thing: there's Levy, there's this Fomenko guy. But
they're not your tops. I mean, you're just going to.
Yeah. Look, folks, I contacted 3 guys who run Tartaria theory stuff on their sites and said, hey, can you tell me who you guys think are the good ones that I should talk to, because I would like to have them on my show. Look, folks, I want to talk about Tartaria on this show. I find it interesting enough. And I find there to be a nugget of value, okay? But what I'm telling you is the lazy crap, the arbitrary dismissal, of things that just don't, support your hypothesis. Nah.
Okay, we called it wrong on Thomas. Sorry, man.
Okay, Thomas. Sorry, Thomas. It was just a comment of opportunity. But yeah, actually, that's good. But that's a good question, Thomas, because I want Tartaria people to suggest to me who maybe I should have on the show. In case I do have this wrong, in case there is some really honest. Levy ain't it, folks. I'm sorry. Levy ain't it. I have. There's another thing he did, which was some lost Tartarian colony in the desert or something, and it took me that was one that took me like 17 or 18 minutes to find the county and city construction records and identify that it was just the beginning of a housing subdivision that they lost money and decided not to continue with. And yeah, it's out in the desert, and of course the sand covered it, but Levy's presenting it like this big mystery, and it was ridiculous, and I presented it on my YouTube years ago. But let's go back to Matthew Travis says, I have been called an idiot for making a statement they couldn't counter logically. Yeah, that's what they do. This is also what the a-holes who question the moon landing do. They call you an idiot. They do the ad hominem attack, right?
And this, yes.
And the flat earthers, oh, you're just an idiot, or you're a fool, or you're one of them. This kind of stuff is rampant in our community. And, when you throw your hat in the ring to be a researcher or whatever, you just have to endure this kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
So let's see.
Crypto has a good comment there. I didn't know that.
Whoa,
Cool.
crypto. Okay. Okay, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that because see there, I would like to hear this. There you go. There's an example. I am totally open to having Tartarian researchers, scholars, um, you know, who have looked into this and have their own spin on the hypothesis or
tell them where they can reach us at too if there's someone out there at LGH the email. I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, I don't have it memorized off the. She'll put it. Malia will put it in the chat. So
if you want to contact us about what we're talking about, Tartarian, or you'd like to be considered as someone that we might bring on the show, please just send an email to this address, and we will. You can put it up there.
I can what?
Click on it and put it up.
Oh, there it is. I'm sorry. Right there. That email address right there. That's our production studio address.
Right.
And here's another thing. Be prepared to maybe change the name, the label that you've put on this. You might be smart to stop calling it Tartarian because that might trip pedantics up that are just, no, the Tartary Empire was the 14th to 19th centuries and it was this and nothing but that. And yeah, that might be a valid argument. So, be a little more flexible to be open to, good evidence you might find, or open to admitting that, okay, our context might be a little off or something.
Oh, Thomas has a couple good ones too.
Oh, here we go. Thomas Jefferson with, I like the following Tartarian scholars. Archival analog, his name's Ben, Dr. Narco Longo, a.k.a. Old World Florida. I think I've heard of Old World Florida. I've probably seen if they do videos, documentaries, or blogs and things like that. I've probably seen both of them, but off the top of my head, the names might not come to me.
And
but
Hermes is not on topic, so you don't have to go into that if you don't want to. We can do that on Friday.
Okay.
And talk about that.
Hermie, we'll answer that question on Friday. Matthew.
That's a long answer.
Marley did it. Narco Longo, not a fake name at all.
And it fits into our Friday topic.
Matthew Travis says they don't want to call it Atlantis. Yeah, because literally it might not be Atlantis, but whatever Atlantis was, that might be what it is. Oh, here we go. Here's another one. See, folks, I love this. I want to thank all of you, particularly, those of you I don't recognize your names. If you came here for the Tartaria discussion, Jake Duddy says, you asked for one very good researcher. You should contact Howdy McCoskey. He made a book called Exposing the Exhibitions, Ancient Rome and America. Okay, that's interesting enough. I may not end up agreeing with his hypothesis, but there we go. There's a suggestion right there.
I have heard of Howdy, but not on the Tartarian thing. It was something else.
You have? Okay, there we go. Hey, are we writing this down or?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Herbie. We'll totally talk about that on Friday. Because I want to go into that.
But I definitely thank you, Jake, for the recommendation, and Thomas Jefferson also for these names. See, there you go, folks. Yeah. Will I be critical of something? You betcha. You bet I will. That's how we get to the truth. Partly how we get to the truth is the critical thinking, right? But like I said, I'll be critical on the one hand of things that I think deserve criticism, but I'm open to suggestions. Crypto says, Howdy is a weirdo. Okay.
Darcy.
Black Tie says, Jay Widener is starting to look at Tartaria. Yeah, see? There's people who want to look at this in a serious way, but this arbitrary, trust me, bro, approach of some of the more, particular popular scholars on this. No, that can't fly.
Hey, Matt's here too. Matt Travis.
Yes.
And did you get Dake's question you did, right? Howdy. Sorry. I was just seeing that one.
Oh, throat's getting dry after an hour and 49 minutes. Boy. See, I like this topic. I'm gone 20 minutes longer than I usually do with these episodes. And again, thanks you folks who gave the super chats and the super thanks. I appreciate that. Much appreciated. Okay, here we go. Crypto Alchemist. I can put you in touch with Shem Jacobs, aka Tartarian Truth. Great actual source research. Actually has a second channel that just makes fun of bad research. Oh, I'm real interested in that. Shem Jacobs, Tartarian Truth. There we go. See, this is why I do a show like this, because I want you guys to school me, tell me, no, Walter, you got it wrong. There's actually a bunch of guys out there that are doing it right. That's what I want to see. That's what I'm asking for.
I got a little bit of a problem with that Bruce comment there, because I know for one that
Bruce,
you don't
believe that all those moon landing Bruce, knock it off. Okay,
come on,
knock it off. Look, here's where I'm at on the moon landing. Look, we went. Okay, knock it off.
It just
Jesus H.
Okay, some of them are real.
Hold on.
Some of them are not real. That doesn't mean they all go under the bus.
Yeah. I absolutely agree that something went on with those moon landings that to this day they haven't told us. I absolutely am in line with the hypothesis that there's stuff up on the moon we are not told about. Okay? But this idea that we didn't go, knock it off. Okay? Here's another group. Here's what I'm talking about. The moon landing deniers, when you say, go look at all the scientific evidence that proves that, what do? They dismiss it. Oh, well, that's all BS. Well, wait a minute. You don't get to just
NASA
arbitrarily.
All BS. NASA, everything to do with NASA.
It's all BS.
It's all BS.
Knock it off. Hey, I got a little trivia for you. I'm sitting here in Redlands, California, and the moon landing denier theory originated with a guy who was a student of the University of Redlands back in the 70s. You can look him up. I forget his name, but the father of the moon landing denier theory was right here where I'm at in Redlands, California. So hold on. So anyway, I'm sorry, Bruce, but we went to the moon. I've looked at it critically. Years ago. Here's another thing. You get people who something's been around for years, and because it's giving them. Can I say boner? Now that I'm
no.
Okay. Because it excites them, presently they assume that you haven't looked at it before. Look, I heard about this moon landing denial thing years ago, my friends, and I looked at the argument for it, and I came down to my own conclusion that no, I don't buy this crap that we didn't go. Okay? The evidence for us having gone is essentially overwhelming. And just because the arbitrary.
See, and I like that too, Tom.
Not all of the you know what?
That's interesting.
There are some photos that some odd things can be pointed out. Okay. Anyway, I'm not being dragged into a troll debate on this. Bye-bye, Bruce. Thank you for being here. And I asked for people to stay on the Tartarian topic, but I guess that was kind of on topic because he was. You were in context, Bruce. In all fairness, you were in context.
I like what Megalithic said too.
Oh, who?
Megalithic here.
No. Before that, and we'll get to you, Megalithic. D. Dorothy, the Tartars and the Scythians are connected.
I know, right? Scythians.
Scythians,
Scythian.
tomato.
I know, right? She said some.
Thank
really
you, D.
interesting
Dorothy,
stuff.
because that one is a comment that intrigues me deeply. There's something to look at, people. There you go, Tartaria guys. D. Dorothy just gave you a gift. I don't know if anyone's looked at that yet, but consider a connection with the Scythians. I'm going to.
That is awesome. Yes.
Megalithic Yard says, Hoagland has evidence that the landing denier thing was CIA disinfo. Well, what do you know?
Yeah, I do like that comment. Good job.
Here we go. Crypto Alchemist. Yes, Scythians and Tartarians are 100% the same. Exactly what Shem Jacob. There we go. There we go. Crypto came in with a suggestion, and sure enough, this scholar, another scholar, has looked at that. I like that. I will take a look to see what Shem Jacobs has to say about the D's suggestion that the Scythians and Tartarians are the same. I like this. There we go. Now you're talking, folks. Now you're talking. There's at least a thread that can be pulled instead of this arbitrary, trust me, bro, crap.
Totally, Darcy. Yep. Right on. What she said. What he said.
The Scythian names thing?
No, we went with tech. We don't talk about it. And we've been going back the whole time to the moon.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think we've gone secretly. Well, we can't get through the Van Allen belts.
Yes.
I got to do a classic Walter Bosley channel thing here. We cannot get through the Van Allen belts. Jesus, people.
Oh, good.
Bruce brought up a point. The Scythians are Scots. I think there is likely a connection there.
Possibly. Are they Scots? Some wonder. There's debate on whether Scythian is Scottish or Nordic.
But among the Scots, there's Nordics. Think about that.
Well, of course, but there's a difference.
That's that. I like that suggestion, Bruce. Good one. Good one. Ev Dog from Air says the last defeat of horse archers was the Meiji Restoration in, is that 1868? Really? Okay, that's interesting.
Wait, did you get to megalithics?
Did I get what?
To megalithics.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what about our package? We'll be opening.
Oh gosh.
Package.
Yeah, folks, we got some unboxing.
And show what Todd gave us. We got some Christmas gifts from fans.
Well, I showed the.
Yeah, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah. So now.
Show it again. Where is it?
Folks, I want to say this before I forget. Those of you who are friends with our friend Cardinal Sin, our dear friend, the late Gil, his brother Ari, and others are going to be hosting a special episode of Cardinal Sin's. I don't know, whose show is it going to be on? Is it going to be on his?
On Cardinal Sin's channel.
Yeah, on Cardinal Sin's channel. And they're going to do the spinning wheel, and you get to win one of Cardinal Sin's really cool collectibles.
Haunted relics.
Yeah, his haunted relics. So make sure you tune into that tomorrow night. We'll find out what time, and we'll post that. So, hey, look, we had a fantastic turnout for this today.
Yeah.
I mean, at one point, the counter was
great topic.
Yeah, I think so. And again, it's a topic that I find interesting. So here we have, speaking of Ari Bavel, we got a package from him today. Going to open it up, see what it is. Okay. First, there's a book by David Lamp, The Last Ditch, Britain's Secret Resistance and the Nazi Invasion Plans. Now, if you guys remember, my latest book is NIMSA, How America Sold Its Soul. You can get that at walterbosley.com. And I talk about how I think the post-war Nazi international that Joseph Farrell talks about invaded the United States through Operation Paperclip. So this topic is kind of near and dear to my scholarly heart. So thank you, Ari, for that. But also, look what he sent.
The cards.
The cards. This is
haunted.
This is the famous, currently kind of famous, infamous, however you want to look at it. This is the ufology tarot that Red Pill Junkie and Greg Bishop and a couple of the other guys kind of put together. And that's so funny. Ari, thank you, because this thing's a hoot. You guys have seen this around, I'm sure. I'm not going to, that's Whitley Strieber and I don't know who the high priestess is. I think it's Jenny Randalls.
He told us about, he was at WonderCon.
WonderCon, thank you.
Yeah. And you spoke with him.
Yeah.
On stage there, and he showed us and went through the book with us and showed us.
Greg did. He showed
nuances,
us,
and he talked about the Great Priestess one, but I don't remember exactly what he said about it.
These are limited, and what Ari has sent here, that I think this was one of Gil's recent acquisitions. This is number 325 of only 500 sets.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, Ari. This is fun. This is cool. We will cherish this. And again, we'll post how you can be part of, the viewers can be part of winning some of Cardinal Sin's collectibles so that we can keep his legacy alive. Gil was just fantastic proponent of pop culture, a fan of it, and he will be missed. He left us way too soon. And so thank you, Ari. Thank you very much. So did we thank everybody who...
High Command Podcast says hi.
Mm-hmm.
Amy Collin would like to know, why not just read the trajectory reports?
Yes, thank you, Amy Collins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
High Command Podcast says, hey, Walter.
I see that. Yeah, that's why. High Command Podcast. The High Command Podcast. That implies maybe, I need to have him here and he needs to have me there. Let's expand our network there. Well, thank you, Matthew. Yeah.
So High Command Podcast is a YouTube channel associated with Burton and Stanley Booksellers and Brass Knuckle Publishing. Okay. Art, exploration, archaeology, anthropology, ancient civilizations, alternative history, cryptozoology, adventuring, literature, philosophy, religion, antiquities. The strange and unexplained.
Yes. High Command, we need to talk.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Renee, Mrs. Johnny-Side says, very interesting topic, great show. Thank you, Renee, Mrs. Johnny-Side. Hey, what is Megalith still here?
Better be.
Give him a wrench.
Well, I need your phone for that, mister.
Oh. Megalith, are you still here?
I thought he did have one. No, he doesn't. You're right.
There he is. Give that man a wrench. We've been meaning to do this. There's a whole Thank you, crypto alchemists. And I'm definitely going to be talking with you about Tartaria, because this ain't going to be the last one that we have about Tartaria. And let me tell you something. If I'm presented with the right kind of research, the right kind of evidence, I'll change my position on, any, I'll go from less critical to more accepting. If I see that, I'm honest that way. A velvet monkey wrench. Well, this is great. I've really enjoyed. What's that?
And Crypto gets one.
Yes.
Thank you, Crypto, for being here. I'm a great fan. I'm probably muttering.
Yeah, because I know you guys are here a lot. Megalith's here every time and has been for a while. He's one of the best friends of this show. And he knows my lack of tolerance for trolls. And why? Because trolls serve no purpose. They don't do anything but just disrupt. And, they look, this may not be true of you, but when you act like a troll, you leave people with the impression that you're just some sad little man, sad little guy, probably in his 40s, in that generation of American males who are in their 40s, who, daddy rejected or didn't love him enough. And so he's angry and, he took too many courses in philosophy in college, certainly, obsessed with debate. And because, he's not being taken seriously, he's got to go troll people, that may not be true of you, but, you're giving people that impression when you
it discredits the chat.
It discredits it.
Right.
Yep.
You're right. It's exactly, if we take this live and we take a living room and we put a bunch of people in it, 150 to 250, and you let everybody say whatever they want to say when they want to say it, of course you're going to have some idiots, fools in the room, and they want to garner all of the attention of the room. They're not there for philosophical, honest discussion. They're there for the attention to themselves.
Yes, yeah. To distract from the conversation. Yeah. It's a tactic.
And make people feel uncomfortable.
It's a tactic that people have when they don't like.
That's how we see it. Walter and I, when we're live, we're bringing you into our home. We're bringing you into our environment, our world, and
anybody doing this kind of thing does.
And we see that, like your friends, your family. We're part of the Bosley-verse. A bunch of orphans, most of us. But
Nick says he's feeling called out. Lonely little man in his foot. Sorry, Nick.
But if we just let a bunch of jerk faces command the whatever, what's the point?
It's distracting.
It is. It's so distracting.
Megalith says the drop in the geomagnetic field is also making more crazy people. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Well,
good job, guys.
Do you think I've been on here long enough talking their ears off? My gosh, I went over 2 hours today. Because I'm enthused about the topic. I love talking with you guys. Thank you all who thank you again for the super chats and the super thanks. Much appreciated.
Well, we have some fun shows coming up for January. We're kicking it off with Todd Wood in California.
Yeah. We should have Joseph Farrell this coming month in January.
And Friday we're doing it early.
Right? Yes, Friday will be on for mine and Malia's Friday night show. We'll be on early because we have a family social engagement that evening, and so we'll be on a little earlier in the day on Friday.
We decide on 3 p.m. Pacific, right?
Something like that, between 2:30 and 3, something like that. About the time I started today.
Yeah. Wednesday.
So, and Eric Olson says, California with William Ramsey was fantastic. I'm supposed to do with Todd, be on Ramsey's show.
Oh, well, yeah, and I'll be on this coming Wednesday, too, with Todd, because he wanted me to talk.
Malia's going to be with us next Wednesday, a week from today, when
the ninth configuration.
The film, The Ninth Configuration. Yeah, not the ninth gate, the ninth configuration. Yeah, and Eric Olson mentioned that, and that's why I want to say that again a week from today, another episode of California.
Yeah, it'll be about genocide. I'm thinking 3. We're going to go for 3 p.m. our time. So, right about when you're driving home from work.
Pacific time.
And we'll take a good 20 minutes to get warmed up. Oh, I'm teasing. Be there on time or else.
Darcy Edmonds asked something about, was that the right one?
Trolls are rock people, silicone based. Crazy film, not silicone. All right. Did you finish it up?
I think that's it. I think that's it, folks. Thank you again, everyone, for being here in the live chat. It was a lively live chat. I hope, if I got a little curmudgeonly on something anyone asked, don't take it personally. And you're welcome here. And you're welcome to say something counter to what I'm saying. You're welcome to ask me questions. You're welcome to be critical of something that I'm saying. I never, only trolls, okay, flat out troll behavior is not tolerated here. Critical thinking is tolerated, but I'm going to give you a response. And if it's a spirited response, well, hey, it's just trying to match the spirit of your question or your comment. So, but never run off if I give a spirited, curmudgeonly response to something, okay? Because I don't mean that anyone's personally a bad human being just because we disagree over ideas. Megalith says, "Thank you, the honor of Wrenchhood." Hey, you're overdue for getting one, Megalith. You've been here for a while, and it's much appreciated. So again, if you came here because you're a Tartaria enthusiast, please come back. Please feel free to contact me. We were given about 4 or 5 names of Tartaria scholars that are respected by folks out there, and we are going to follow up. And if I like what I see, well, let me rephrase that. I don't have to necessarily like what I see or agree with what I see, but if I like the effort at the scholarship and research, whether I agree with the conclusions or not, I'll gladly have that person on this show, to share their ideas and to talk about it, and not a debate, not an argument, a discussion.
And I want to say this too, throw it out there.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all check out, if you're on TikTok, Walter's show is going to be going on to TikTok.
Yeah, very soon we're going to be streaming live on TikTok as well. So go to is it under Walter Bosley or Walter Bosley channel on my TikTok?
I don't know. It's yours.
Yeah, look up Walter Bosley on TikTok.
Probably Walter Bosley.
Yeah, and you'll find me.
But it might just be.
And so I'm going to start posting there a lot more. I've prepared 3 topical videos that are being edited by my daughter Liliana, who's like a master at social media. Look her up. She's under the name Glamly Slays on TikTok. She's
like, no, don't.
GLAMLISLAYS. Shh. I'm spelling. GLAMLISLAYS. Glamly Slays. And she's editing 3 of my first topical that I recorded, and I'm going to be doing more. There's a guy I want to recommend to you. I'd love to have him on this show. The host of it. He's not the only one there, but check out the TikTok account user, the Museum of Tarot. I really like this guy's the way he presents stuff and how the topics they present. The Museum of Tarot. TAROT. Check that out. So, okay, folks, that's it. I'm starving.
We better go get some dinner.
So, thank you all. This was a fun show. I really enjoyed it. We will be doing another Tartaria episode. You can count on it. Okay, I'm committed to doing another one. And Megalith says Esoterica is a great channel on YouTube. We will check that out. So, okay, everybody, have a good night. I hope you had a great Christmas. We'll see you Friday, but I'll say it here too. Also, have a good New Year's Eve. Be safe, and we will see you Friday. And I'm probably going to show. Well, I am going to show up tomorrow night on the Cardinal Sin spinning wheel giveaway. So look for me there.
Look for Cardinal Sin's channel. Get subscribed because I think Gil, or I almost said Gil. I think Ari has plans for that.
I'm sure Gil does too. That smart ass.
He's like, that Malia.
Gil's up there laughing at all of us right now. Okay. All right, guys. Have a good night.